Hi, hello and welcome back to the studio. It's been a long time since I made a video because there's been an awful lot going on. Turning out the big bulb so you can see that better. That is a photograph I took a couple of weeks ago on the A5. This mountainy bit over there is tail end of Tryfan. That is the A5 road there, and these are the foothills of Tryfan going up. It was pouring down with rain. I was coming back from Anglesey and I took several pictures, and what I loved about it is the feeling of Snowdonia in the rain, which is most of the time. But I just love those mountains. It was wonderful driving through them. And so I'm going to get on and do a painting. Just put that away so it doesn't fall over in my paint anywhere. Right, that's that stood over there. Palette I'm using, I'll put the lights on now because you could do with some colour. I'm using titanium white, Naples yellow, lemon yellow, terra vert, cobalt blue because it's cold. I've got a touch there of violet. That one is Winsor & Newton, the rest are all SAA, but that's Windsor Violet, which I like. It's a violent violet. And down here I've got my earth colours. I've got raw sienna, burnt sienna, raw umber, burnt umber. And without further ado, I shall get on. Oh, mixing. I've got little pots. Luckily I'm not well. I get these free pots every month with pills in. That one's distilled terps, not white spirit, proper terps. And that, as it says, is a mixture of alkyd flow medium and poppy oil, which I like to paint with. The poppy oil works the same way as linseed oil, and the alkyd speeds up the drying a little bit. So I'm not going to bother doing a drawing. It's going to be very simple. That comes down like that, and that goes up like that. So it's not worth drawing. I'm going to leave out the road in the foreground, so I'll zoom in a bit on it. All the road and the wall does is form a barrier. So I'm going to pretend that I've crossed the road and I'm standing against the wall taking a photo. So off we go. Sip of coffee. First thing I'm going to do is mix down some paint with pure terps, because I just want to put a very thin coloury wash into the top area. Because I'm thinning it down with pure terps, it'll dry very, very quickly. So it's a sort of cloudy colour. And I'm making a touch of raw sienna, touch of cobalt blue, and it's a sort of warm grey. And I scribble that on. I'm using this Galeria brush, which is a soft brush actually made, as the name suggests, for using with acrylics, but I quite like them for oils as well. In fact, my oil brushes and acrylic brushes are more or less interchangeable. I'm adding a little bit more of the Naples yellow down here because I want it fading off. The board I'm painting on is a piece of 3mm MDF cut to 16 by 12 inches, which is a handy size. And what I do is I buy a sheet 8 foot by 4 foot and then cut it down with a Stanley knife. Not a good idea to drop your brush as you're painting, tends to make a mess. There. You can see there's a little mark there where I had an accident with the Stanley knife when I was cutting it. But it doesn't matter because I'll cover it up in paint and you won't even see it by the time I've finished. He said hopefully. This is drying already because it's just mixed with terps. Terps isn't like oil, it's not oily, it's a mineral spirit and it evaporates, so it very quickly evaporates and just leaves the colour on the painting. It will be dry, well, touch dry within minutes. So there, I've got a cloudy bit in there just as an underpainting. Got some white spirit here for cleaning the brush. It looks more like paraffin at the moment because the last thing I did was a red flower. So there's lots of red paint in my terps, white spirit, cleaning stuff. There. That's what I clean with. So now I'm going to use a thin brush if I can find one handy. That one will do. There. This is a Daylon rigger, a donkey's years old, and I use it for all sorts. Now I'm going to mix a drawing colour, cobalt blue, some of the burnt umber, and that gives me a really nice dark colour. Still just mixing with distilled terps, and I'm going to rough in roughly where I want this first rocky bit to go. Some rocky bits here. Put some grass down there, that goes back across there, and in the back we've got this lovely big mountain disappearing into the clouds. Watching Tryfan disappearing into clouds like that always takes me back to holidays when I was a kid. My Uncle Jack, my posh uncle, because he had a car. In fact, he was the only person I knew who had a car. We used to go and stay with him in Rill every summer, and we'd go on the most amazing trips where I developed my love of Snowdonia and the wilds of North Wales. He was actually a rep, that was his job, and he was a paint and wallpaper rep, and his area was North Wales, so he used to know all these back roads to everywhere. It's lovely. Right, okay, enough nostalgia. I'm mixing up a splodge into that. I'm using the poppy oil and alkyd mix. I'm putting some Tryfan. The purists will say you shouldn't use greens, and I'm mixing some blue into it, and that will be my distant hill colour mixed in with the Naples yellow and white. You have vanished, you naughty picture. Come on. Add a touch of raw umber into that to brown it off a bit. I'm I'm just adding in dobs of raw sienna to break up the colours a bit. This is nowhere near the colour it's going to end up. I'm building up layers on this. But there's my disappearing mountain. Donovan. First there was a mountain, then there was no mountain, then there was. So that already is going a long way back. Now before I start on the brighter colours in the foreground, I'm actually going to put the sky in. Still using the same colours, but a little bit more of the blue and the white. Adding some of the alkyd and poppy oil to the mix. And now I've got a much stronger bluey grey, but it's still picking up the paint from there. The terps is all but gone, but there's still damp, thin paint there to mix up into this. keeping it nice and free because it's moving clouds. Lighter as it comes down towards the horizon. It's that lovely sort of rain. I don't think there's an English or Welsh word for it. In the Scots call it smyr. I can't pronounce it right. S-M-I-R-R. It's sort of like not quite drizzle, not quite cloud. A little bit more dark where that huge great mountain becomes insubstantial. Clean the brush. More oil into that and almost oil it out. A tiny touch of this purple into the dark bits and mix it with some burnt umber just to take the edge off it. But there we've got some bruised coloured clouds at the very top. Oiling it all in, or blending it all in. There. And through there, and we've got sort of bruised coloured cloud at the top, and then blending down into this misty, rainy stuff. Very, very Welsh weather. Okay, next bit I'm going to do is a little bit more detail in this rainy bit. Naples yellow. Naples yellow into that, raw sienna, touch of the blue, and a tiny touch of lemon yellow just to give it an extra hint of green. And now I'm laying this on top of the blendy bits. keeping it a little bit thicker and adding more oil to it. Using the brush to show the contour. I'm darkening bits of it with raw sienna, but still keeping it not too bright. It's quite light but not bright. Lots of white, lots of mixing it into the sky colour. Just adding white to some of these bits to lighten them. Into that there's lots of heathery sort of colour, so that's burnt sienna into this with a reddy sort of dead heather look. I'm not blending this in at all yet, I'm just leaving the dark colour on the top. Now, I'm going to use a badger fan, which is a little, it's called badger hair, don't think it is, well I hope it isn't. I'm just going to blend in the edges of those darker bits. And I don't know if you can see, I'm just using little circular motions to blend it. So there. And darker bits down here. Right. Also, while I've got that, I'm going to get some white and just blend in. I'll be able to put some more of the lighter stuff in behind there. Right, now I'm going to start using bristle brushes. Most of these are Rosemary & Co. Good few years old and still as good as new. Because now, oh, I tad of Payne's Grey into this. Because I'm going to be making some really dark darks now. It's handy to have a little smidge of Payne's Grey on your palette. Okay, now all here we've got much higher contrast. So, no, I was going to be very good and use a palette knife for mixing, but I haven't got one handy. Payne's Grey, white, touch of the raw burnt sienna, which is the closest to red I've got on this palette. It's the warmest colour of all of them. Okay. Now this is thicker paint. And again, I'm using it to get, I want a hard outline against that sky here as opposed to the soft outline over there. some rocky bits up there. And this all comes down, so I'm going to mix the terrebert into this dark colour, add some of the blue to it. Adding some highlights into there with just a touch of Naples yellow and lemon yellow mixed. Where that comes up there. Okay. Dark where that's the greatest contrast. Rocky bits. And now some lighter grey, Payne's grey, white, touch of the sienna. Now this should be fairly thick now, and I'm going to start laying paint on. Trying to give the impression of chunks of rock breaking through the surface. When it's a little bit drier, I'll be able to go in and put shadows in, but at the moment I want to get these hard bits. Right, got that. I use a shorter flat, not the handle, the bristles, and I'm going to put the lighter colour over here. It's almost pure yellow ochre this, but I'm not using lemon oak. Blech. I'm not using yellow ochre on this palette, so raw sienna, Naples red, Naples yellow, and that gives me something that's very similar to yellow ochre. Now added a little bit of white to the mix here. I'm using the brush strokes to show the shape and the roughness. Some of the terra verte into that mix, touch of the blue, touch of lemon yellow, make a bit of a brighter greeny colour. I'm painting this with my eyes half closed so that I don't get bogged down with details. Down here I'm mixing a proper green, lemon yellow, cobalt blue, because this is where it comes to the lush of grass at the bottom of the road edge. Blending these in a little bit. Right, so that is my underpainting done, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop for 5 minutes, go make a cup of coffee, and let that gel down, have a look and see where I want to go next. Okay, so I'll pause that now. Right, I'm back. I left it for more than a couple of minutes. It's overnight that I've left it for one reason or another, and now I'm going to come back to it, and I've had a think. I'm going to finish it off using palette knives because I think it's the rocky foreground lends itself. So I've dug out some of my favourite ones. There's that one which I use quite a lot for straight lines, and the rest are all variations on the triangular theme. That one I've had for donkey's years, and it used to be quite pointed, but it isn't anymore. It used to be more that shape, only with a pointier nose. Anyway, I'll get on and I'll lay in some. This is dry now because of using the alkyd medium, so it's basically just paint going on now. I'm mixing up some raw sienna with Naples yellow. I'm gonna stick this down because it's wobbling like mad for some reason, my palette today. There. So my palette's not going anywhere, and hopefully I'll be able to welly on this stuff now. So there, I've got raw sienna, I've got Naples yellow, I'm putting a touch of terra vert into that. I'm using my good old favourite, and I'm going to pull that over there a little bit, or not. I want to make sure that this disappears behind. Actually picking up on the brush strokes underneath there. Burnt sienna. Some more umber. burnt sienna. Red that up a bit, some white to knock it back, a touch of blue, and as it's getting closer, I'm laying in more of the burnt sienna to give it more colour, warm it up, bring it closer. So that's all quite a long way away. Just put a little bit of texture, some darks into that. Here, there and everywhere, just dancing about with the darks. Burnt umber, touch of ultramarine. I'll do it now, if I can find my cleany thing. Another earthquake. Clean that one off. I'm using a slightly different one. This, I don't know if you can see, this very old one. It's been used for all sorts of things. It's got glitter on the handle, but it's got a longer stem than the more modern ones, and I just find it easier to use, although it's a bit battered and you can't get the same sharp edges on it that I used to get. Now, sky. Lots and lots of white. A little touch of ultramarine. Some of the umber colour. And I've got this paley, misty colour, and And there we've got some cloudiness coming down there. Just do this a bit more gently to feather it. Might do some more on that later. So there. Right, okay. Now I'm going to start hammering in with the foreground mountain there. Oh, we're looking for that and it vanished. Right, quiet because I'm thinking. Okay, now. Burnt umber. Touch of the raw, of the burnt sienna. Touch of blue. Touch of purple just to give it some zing. And now I'm going to start putting in this outcrop. Now already that's coming a lot further forward. Now I want to sort out the this bit here, the grassy bit. Ah, there. I'm wandering around the studio looking for where I put my cup of coffee. There. Okay, now white, Naples yellow, and into that and put some lemon and ultramarine. Mix it all up. I've got that sort of greeny colour, which is far too green for what I want, so yellow ochre, which is what I always intended to put into it, to make it a browny coloured green. But can you see that there's all sorts of different colours on that knife at the same time? I haven't mixed it all up very tightly because I want them to mix on the canvas. I'm dragging some of that down into it. And I want this nice and thick and craggy looking. Lots and lots of different greens, because there are. When you look at moorland, hillside stuff, your eyes sort of convince your brain, well, your brain convinces your eyes that everything is one colour, but it's not. It's like pixels in a photograph. Everything blends and you've got little tiny dots of different colours all mixed together. Okay, some of that is sorted. I want more brighter greeny colour. Not much, but this bit is closer. So there, now I want, if you remember back to the beginning, there's sort of browny deady grass under there, so I'm going back to my smaller. No, I'll use that one because no, that one's not quite so bent. Lost my picture. Come on, picture. There. Right. And sort of clumps of darker, redder grass. Which I'm mixing more of the burnt sienna into that very dark colour. I'm just playing around with the palette knife here. It's texture I'm after. A sort of tuftiness. Hopefully, by the time I get to the rocks, you'll be able to see a difference in the texture. Right, I've got a sort of splodgy bit there, and now I need to get some real darks and real lights and start making the rocks. So Payne's grey into my dark, and some purple, violent violet, now I'm going to work out where the rocks are. Some of them are an offshoot from there. I'm being very gentle because I don't want to disturb the really thick paint underneath too much. Now mix some paler colour into that for these foreground ones. Pressing a little bit harder to pick up some of the paler colours underneath. Mix a paler grey, I just want to put some lines in there to give it more shape. Right, we've got that. Now, clean off my palette knife, lots of white, touch of ultramarine because that will, ultramarine going into white gets very pale very quickly. Touch of the purple, blend in some more of the dark colour from underneath. And now I've got a nice light rocky colour. Try this one. My problem is I don't really look after my palette knives well enough. And they tend to get a bit buckled and bent. I think somebody in the road has called for a taxi. Just looking at where the light is hitting the surfaces of these rocky outcrops. Also, rather than working from where they appear on the on the photograph, I'm following some of the contours of the knife strokes. The ones closer, I'm adding a little touch of yellow to warm it all up a little bit. Now, what I've got to do is find a level between faffing and trying to think of the real word, between somewhere between faffing with it and actually making it better. Okay, now I've just grabbed a couple of new paints because I want to add some highlighty bits in. One is hard to open. It's a colour called Sunflower Yellow, which is made by the SAA, and it's very close, the closest I've seen to the old chrome yellow, which is probably why it's called sunflower yellow, because it's the chrome yellow is what Van Gogh used to paint his sunflowers with, which is why they haven't weathered particularly well, because it tends to go green after a while, which is why they stopped making it. So I'm using this sunflower yellow, which when I first started painting I used to love chrome green, and this is the closest I've seen to it. And I'm going to use yellow ochre instead of raw sienna, and there should be I thought I had a nice bright red out, but I haven't. I'm going to use a cadmium-y red just to welly in a few tiny bits. There you go, pure cadmium red. Probably the most expensive paint I own, because it's not a hue, it's real cadmium. Right, now, while I've been doing that, I've been having a look at the painting, wondering where I want to put my brights. I'm going to use the yellow ochre with a touch of lemon yellow in it, and that's the bit I want somewhere around there on the grass here. I want it less intense up here, so I'm going to put some highlighty bits. Some tiny bits into the rock where there's mossy algae stuff growing. Across there, just add some of this sunflower to it. Really deepens it and oranges it. So I've got some really strong colours now going in to drag this forward. Touch of the cadmium into that. Took me by surprise again, Mr. Cadmium, you're so strong. Right. I just put a tiny touch of cadmium in and it went bang. In the foreground, I'm mixing a really deep orangey brown colour with yellow ochre, cadmium, touch of white, and something over there. Bit yellowier. Playing around with brighter colours now, picking them up off the palette and just putting them where I think we need a little bit more brightness. I'm not mixing much at all now, I'm just letting it mix on the paper. Paper, canvas. Smaller blobs here and there. Clean you up. Now I want to put some darker bits to delineate the undersides of these rocks. Burnt sienna, burnt umber, purple, Payne's grey. All the darks, all the darkest of the darks. And into that touch of the cadmium to warm it all up. See, I've got a roll on the bottom of the palette knife there, so I should be able to draw some lines with it. I'm running the risk now of fiddling. And mix up a pure orange. If I can get enough yellow into this cadmium. Now I won't bother looking at the picture anymore, and I just want to put some hints in this foreground. It's not actually anything at all, it's just marks to bring the foreground closer. Mix some with the grey colours. Right, I am going to leave the rocky bits. Just going to get this knife some almost pure white, touch of the blue, touch of this browny colour that's already there, lots more white. I just want more white. Now hopefully that is starting to look something there. I am going to knock that on the head, finished or not, and probably start another painting. So there we go. Don't know what I'll call it. Something to do with the foothills of Tryfan. I know what I will do. I'll just, before I do, I'll get this little soft brush, clean it out, throw everything on the floor. What was it my mother always used to say? More haste, less speed. And just where it's overlapping, I'll do a little bit more blending. Now all I'm doing with this brush is just softening the brush marks in that almost pure paint. There, clean that off a little bit and put a tiny touch of the alkyd medium onto the brush. And there we go. Now that is almost a homage, a tribute to the slopes of Tryfan in the rain. One more little touch, little bit of dark there. Some jaggedy edges. Sharpen that bit just a little bit. There, I'm going to finish it. Okay, hope you liked that one. What I like about it, once I started using the palette knives, you can see, hopefully, how I'm trying to define the surface with them. And see, if you look at these bits here, that orange isn't anything in particular, but from a distance it defines the difference between there and there. And so there we go. I'll have another look at it and then I'll put it up on Tinternet. Sorry I've been off the internet for so long. There's all sorts of things going on, like building work in the house, and my dog's been poorly. I've not been too brilliant myself, so anyway, hope you liked that one, and I'll see you very soon.